Jewel Lotus down 40%, Mana Crypt down 50%, and Dockside Extortionist down a whopping 60%. So in today's video, we're going to discuss why cards rise and fall in value. In today's video, we're going to go over the three main points that can contribute towards a card's value. We're also going to go over some factors that can cause a card to rise and fall in value. And this is all in light of what happened with the Magic the Gathering cards the other day. So a few cards got banned. A lot of people are upset. You know, the values plummeted overnight, but this is nothing new. The reality is that this happens often. It's a part of trading cards, and it's going to happen again. So how do we better prepare ourselves for moments like this? And if you're someone new that just getting into trading cards, it's good to be aware of, certain games operate in different ways. So to get a better understanding of what could possibly come, in regards to the value of cards, this will give you a better understanding of that. So I'm going to cover a bit of Magic here and a bit of Pokemon. They're the two top trading card games that have been for a long time, and they both operate in very different ways. So it's just good to look at both sides of the coin of those two big games. So let's get into the three main value points right now. So number one is playability, and this is just going to talk about how good the card is in the actual game, and if a card is really good or really powerful, or it's a staple needed in many decks, that's going to cause demand, and that's going to make the card increase in value. So depending on how good the card is or how in demand the card is, that's going to factor into the value a lot, and it goes the other way. If the card's not really desired, well, it's not going to be worth very much. So quickly getting into that, does the TCG rotate cards out? So many games have different game design. Some games like to rotate cards in and out. Other games like to continuously use the same card pools and just increase that card pool over time. So in this particular case with Magic the Gathering, cards can get banned in the Commander format. When this happens, the values get decimated and people get upset. So just to be aware of how the game design operates and the possible reasons, or just to be more prepared that these things can happen, we can accept the fact that, okay, before I buy my cards for my deck, I'm going to understand that this can happen. It's a real possibility, and I'm going to be okay with that. So the next one is, how often does the company ban cards? So going back to the banning, so we've got to understand that this is a thing that happens in a lot of games. Cards either are too powerful, or they might not be relevant in future game design. So they might become obsolete or just doesn't fit the way that the direction the game's going. And if the card doesn't rotate out, then they have to be banned. So there's many reasons why this can happen. Just be aware that it does happen. So just something to factor in before you go and purchase a card. You might need these cards for your deck. You just got to be okay and comfortable with the fact that, they could get banned one day and they're going to lose a lot of value. So the next one is power creep built into the game design? So what is power creep? So power creep is basically, it's a ramping of power level, as the game continues to grow and new sets come out. Some companies like to make cards more powerful, making the old ones obsolete. So that's going to affect the card value as well. So when the card's in less demand, just due to the fact that the game just doesn't, cater for that particular card moving forward, no one's going to want it, and the value is going to diminish substantially. So that's another thing to be aware of when playability makes up the value of a card. So number two is the aesthetic, or a known character on the card, or just the relevance of the card altogether. So this just points toward foiling of the card. What characters on the card? Do people resonate with that character a lot because, they're attached to a particular IP and that character is someone that they've grown to love? Because a lot of cards, for instance, we'll go back to Magic. We use Mana Crypt for this example of the video just because it's one of the banned cards, but you can't really get attached to a Mana Crypt. It's not a character that you can fall in love with in a cartoon character or a game that you play. So it's, most of the value comes from playability. So this is number two, just pointing out, like, a game like Pokemon where you have your Pikachus and your Charizards. People can easily get attached to those characters and they can become favorites. And that brings value to a card in itself. So even though a card might come out and not be playable, it could have a character that people just love and like to collect. So that brings a lot of value to a card. And that kind of value is a lot more sustainable over time, because you're not at the whim of someone going, all right, well, this card's no longer viable, or we're going to ban this card. Bad luck. a playable Charizard, could be in rotation for what Pokemon use in their 2-year rotation rule. But then all of a sudden it could not be viable in gameplay, but because people love Charizard, it's going to retain that side of that value. So cards can hit playability and have that aesthetic or that known character. So that brings 2 value points to the card. So yeah, in that scenario with the Charizard, you're not going to lose all the value. You're actually going to retain most of it. So that's a good thing to know. So again, getting into that one, how does the card look? Full treatment, the art, etc. So just basically touching on what I said before. Does the card feature a popular character? Same thing as what I went over. Will the card stay relevant? Again, touching on that relevancy, that could, it might not mean like playability in a playability sense. So relevance could be, is that character no longer in a cartoon or a game moving forward? Are they just someone that was in for a couple of seasons of a show? So that character can just become irrelevant. So that's one thing to also note. So like sticking with main characters that aren't going to go anywhere is a safer bet if you're worried about value. But some people just like to collect who they like to collect. So there's nothing wrong with that. But just be aware that that could be a factor that contributes to either, a card rising if the character is popular at the time, and then falling if that character becomes less popular over time. So the last one to touch on there is the artist of the card well known, and this is becoming a big thing. So an artist of the card, they can do many different arts of different cards. Some people resonate or fall in love with a particular art style. So people get attached or emotionally involved in the artist themselves. So, that's another thing that can add value. I'm going to go over a couple of things later that point that out. So that's another thing that can contribute to the value of a card aesthetically. So the last one, scarcity. So this is a big one. Scarcity, in terms of serialized cards, there can only be that amount printed. So that's one thing that can stay with a card throughout its life. So again, we'll just get into that quickly. So is the card easy or hard to obtain? We're going over rarely. Again, what I said before, serialized or a limited print run. How likely will the card be printed? So reprints affect card value, and that can come in the form of 2 different ways. So we can reprint the same set, in turn making more cards in that set available to the public or for sale. And then the other way that a card can get reprinted is in another set. That could come in a form of the same or different art, but sometimes, player staples can get too expensive, so companies will realize that and they'll reprint those cards in future sets. Therefore, more cards of that card hitting the market, which is a good thing for players, but if you're speculating on these things or you're a collector of these things, that's something to be aware of that can hurt the card substantially. So, with that being said, let's go over. So, the first card I want to talk about is Mana Crypt. So, this was one of the cards that were banned in Magic the Gathering. So, whether you're into Magic or not, this applies, to a lot of trading card games. So just be mindful of what I'm saying and the information I'm putting out, because this can apply to a lot of things. So Mana Crypt got banned. As we can see here, this is the example from Double Masters. So I'm going to use this because I'm going to go over another card as well, which is Mana Vault after this, which actually gained in value due to this one being banned. So we see here that it's lost 40% of value overnight. Basically, slight recovery, but hasn't recovered. And I don't think this will recover unless we see, an upturn of the band or it becomes relevant again due to whatever reason. But again, that's we can see that that playability value diminish just from the simple decision that someone made that they're going to ban the card, and then all of a sudden, that value is gone. So that's one thing to be aware of. With playability, the values built around playability. That's going to be most of that value gone in that card. And then in turn, you got Mana Vault. So when a card gets banned, people look for other cards that could possibly replace that card, or people start to speculate on what could be the next Mana Crypt or something similar. So now you have Mana Vault. Immediately when Mana Crypt was banned, we see Mana Vault spike in value. 77%. That's a huge increase, basically overnight. So this is what happens. There's two sides of the coin. So while one card gets banned, another one gets in the spotlight, and all of a sudden, this card's gone up almost double in price. So again, not all is lost. If you got both of these cards, it kind of offset each other. But again, you might not have a mana vault and now you need one, so you're gonna have to fork out the money again and possibly go through that pain of this being banned one day. So this is something to be aware of. So still touching on MTG, I just wanted to go over this because Magic the Gathering, it is an IP in its own IP, but it's not like a big TV series or a big movie or game. And this is why I think Magic the Gathering has gone into, the universes beyond and started getting into different IPs, bringing into the Magic world. So this brings a whole new value proposition for Magic the Gathering. So you see some big names here. I'm going to go over one in particular in the next tab, which is Lord of the Rings. But we can just see that these collaborations are one, going to bring new people into Magic, so that's more money being pushed into the space. And these cards are going to hold more of I wouldn't say like a sentimental thing, but people get attached to these characters of these certain IPs. So when there's a collectible card or something that they really like, these people are going to be more inclined to come and check these cards out and possibly buy these cards. So although these cards are going to become a playable game piece, they're also going to hold value in the terms of, what kind of characters on the card, or they're going to hold some relevance to, different people who aren't, Magic the Gathering players. So just to shine a light on these things are happening now. And, we see big names coming up in 2025. Final Fantasy, Marvel's going to be a huge one. So we're going to see another influx of people that love Final Fantasy or love Marvel come into Magic. So that brings me on to Lord of the Rings. So as I said before, we got Magic the Gathering, the player's game, and you got Magic the Gathering, the collector's side, and these are the type of cards here that collectors look for. And when you bring that scarcity factor into play, so rarity could come into play where these cards are very hard to pull. Then you got the extra layer where these cards are serialized, and you can see the prices here. Like a Soul Ring is one of 300. This was the first Lord of the Rings set that came out with the one of one ring that Post Malone bought for over $2 million. Some crazy money that gets swung around these trading cards at times, and we can see what these serialized things do to the value of cards. So people know that there's only 300 of these. Another one here, the Soul Ring, the Dwarven example. I believe there's 700 of these cards. Again, $1,200 for one of them, market price. And then you got the human one where there's 900, I believe. So people know, okay, if I do pull one of these cards or I do manage to buy one on the secondary market, I know they're not going to get reprinted again, and that's all that's going to exist in the world. So that just gives the collector a bit more confidence that, okay, well, we don't have to worry about further reprints. So that's a huge value proposition for a collector. Then you see the other Lord of the Rings set come out with these, stunning poster style serialized cards. The art's stunning on them, and this is where the art comes into play. Like, they're just beautiful to look at. They become, a piece of art in itself. And then you got the added value of being serialized as well. And that's why you see all these, $2,000, $1,500, $1,300. And then you can also bring the relevance of like who is on the card. It's going to bring more value to the card as well. So all these factors at play here, just so you can get a better understanding of playability does add value, but it's at the lower end of the scale. And then you get these huge collector pieces, which is at the upper spectrum of value. So you can just get an idea of what type of value brings what, price to a card. Then we go over to Pokemon. So just touching on Pokemon now. So Pokemon have a 2-year rotation with their game. So if a set's been out for 2 years, the cards usually aren't legal anymore. So that's something to take note if you're going to, try Pokemon and play the game. So I just wanted to bring that up so you're aware of that. Now, with Giratina V, this come out when Lost Origins was out, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was almost 2 years ago. So we're talking 2022, around October, I believe, something around there. But this card's almost been out for 2 years. It's going to be out of rotation soon, but now we have this artist thing come up again. So Shinji Kanda is a recognizable artist here. The art is stunning. He's got a very unique way of doing his art for Pokemon. And you're going to see that same style on the next card I'll show you. But you can see the value here. When I look at the year over year, there's only 1 year on TCG Player here. Once I get the chart up. So you can see that all this time here, the card was pretty cheap considering it is still an expensive card. But it took this time for people to realize, okay, like the art's stunning, the card's really good. Giratina's up in popularity the last few years. So, this Pokemon's getting a bit of attention. you see this FOMO stage where people start to ape in, and this happens when influencers start talking about it, or there's a bit of light shown on the card. So this is what can happen in Pokemon, and this is the time that you don't want to be buying. So you want to be buying these type of cards, and you want to recognize that, okay, this is a stunning card. Maybe it is undervalued here. I'm going to buy some Giratina Vs here, and then if you are in the market to flip or make money, we can take advantage of these euphoric stages. Now you don't want to buy at the top. Like this is max FOMO, and you can see straight after that the card starts to settle, and then we get to find a real market value of the card. So again, something else to take note of. If you can buy this card, in this phase here, great. But don't never buy it when everyone's talking about it and you see the card skyrocket in value. If you do want to obtain the card because all of a sudden you realize that it is a nice card and you want it in your collection, well, just wait till this happens and you can see the price is still declining. So this is a better time to get in. So next card we got Magikarp. Again, this card went under the radar for a very long time. As you can see when I pull up the 1 year chart, this is an art rare in Paldea Evolved. Again, you get the rarity coming into play. How hard is the card to pull? Again, same artist. You got Shinji Kanda here. Absolutely stunning art. You can see the style is very similar to Giratina. You can see the nice Gyarados at the back there. Awesome looking card. One thing to take note, this card is always going to look like that. The card's never going to change. So the value of the art and the artist, that done this card, and we see another card that is done that's absolutely stunning, that's coming in the Surging Sparks ETB in the Magneton. So how I can say that Magneton's not going to be as valuable is because it is a promo card and it's easier to obtain. So anyone that buys an ETB or an Elite Trainer box of Surging Sparks, the upcoming set, can obtain that card. So it's not going to be very valuable, even though the art is stunning. We have to understand that this rarity comes into play for value. So this card is a bit harder to pull, a bit harder to obtain, even though the artist Shinji, the Giratina has gone up so much because the art's stunning and people have realized that. You just got to understand that rarity does come into play when it comes to collectible cards, especially Pokemon. So again, you've got this phase here where, the card's pretty cheap, no one's really talking about it. So again, if you understood that Shinji was the same artist that did the Giratina and you've seen what happened there, well, we can look back and say, oh, Magikarp, same artist, same stunning art or similar art style because, it's the same artist that done it. And you can look back at Magikarp cards that are rare and hard to pull, do always hold great value. So this happened, Euphoria stage. Again, we don't want to buy at this peak because we see the same exact pattern happening. If you wanted to buy this card and you missed out here, well, just wait because the card's on its way back down again. So we don't have to FOMO in here. But look, if you bought a few copies here, great, we can cash in. But just, again, like, it's what intention do you have? Are you collecting? Are you someone that's, running a side hustle or a business? So, or are you just someone that's playing the game? So just having a better understanding of how these cards can move, where to get into these cards. Well, if you're a player, you don't really have a choice if you want a card and you want it at the time. You just got to shop around for the best deals. But, as a collector, you kind of got an advantage of, when to get into these cards. So we want the best entry because we're holding these cards. We want more money to buy more cards. So we don't want to go buy and FOMO win at the top because, we can save a lot of money if we buy, here or just wait for the card to settle again. So that's all I wanted to do today, just shine a light on that. I hope you learned something in this video, and I'll see you guys at the next one.